This episode is brought to you by North Texas Honda Dealers. North Texas Honda Dealers, they're here to help.
He has time, launches it to the end zone. Touchdown! Terrence Williams!
Throw goes to the right side for Crabtree. It's caught. He he's going hard down. Red Raider.
Was he up the 10? Was he up the right sideline? He's got to go. He's tackled. Sam Houston wins it. The Bearcats capture their first FCS championship.
Hello and welcome to the Republic of Football. I'm your host, Ishmael Johnson, Assistant Managing Editor here at TexasFootball.com, Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and the Managing Editor of TexasBasketball.com, and Dave Campbell's Texas Basketball. Here in studio with our college football insider, Mike Craven. Mike, what is up, man?
Doing pretty good. I just realized my title is much shorter than yours.
Well, I have two titles.
That's a long amount of things. That it's like, man, graduate of Texas State, Manor Tech High School.
Just keep rolling off the resume, basically.
Yeah.
Just start reading
Yeah.
my resume on air.
Yeah.
One that's, I guess, slightly also a longer title than yours. Associate Producer of Texan Live, Mallory Hartley. Mallory, how are you doing?
Good to be here as always.
Yeah. So I don't know. I kind of appreciate the smaller titles because they just know what to do. Like there's no like, all right, so listen, with me and Mallory, it's kind of like, all right, listen, we got this, we kind of do this as well. Mike Craven is like, that's Mike Craven, the college guy.
That's the college guy. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
My first stint at Dave Campbell's, I convinced them to just make me the senior writer.
I do remember that. Like a John Clayton.
Yeah, because we didn't care about titles and stuff. And I was like, can I be the senior writer? I was like 27 years old. And like, sure, okay. So maybe I need to get that back.
Senior college insider.
Yeah.
There you go.
I gave myself a title last semester, or I guess last year.
Yeah.
I was the partner services coordinator,
Yeah.
but I also edited a lot. So I said like video content producer /
Sure.
video
There you
I was
go.
like, it was in my email signature. I was like, I don't know if this is okay, but I'm just gonna add it because who's gonna tell me no?
What is it?
Adam sees it, he's like, that sounds right.
Forgiveness,
I know.
not permission.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Forgiveness, not permission. Anyway,
Oh.
so if you're watching this, we're not here in studio right now. We're actually at Conference USA Media Day. If you're watching,
We'll
this
do a
on
live show
Wednesday at
soon.
2. I was about to say we've done a lot of pre-recorded. Trust me, we will get back to live shows eventually. We just had a lot of things going on. Coaching
And
school,
all
Big 12 Media
Wednesday.
Day. All on.
You
That's a
know,
great
like
point.
It's
we're
all
on
Wednesday. Yeah.
Like it's an amazing weird thing.
Because we had everybody was on vacation, and then Big 12 Media Day, and then coaching school, and then our Conference USA Media Day. Knock on wood, I don't think we have anything the next week. We'll see. I don't know. Something might
Something
just come
will
up.
probably come up. I'm
Something
sure.
will come up where I have to record, but then again, we won't be available Tuesday. Won't get into that, but there's something down the line that me and Mike Craven will be at next Tuesday. So I don't know. If something comes up, we just won't have a show next week. Anyway, we have a couple of headlines here before we talk to our guest for this week, which is the Athletics' Max Olson. But we have some headlines, of course, and we're going to play a weekly game, which I like to call "What Did Mike Craven Do to Piss Off Twitter?" So we'll get into that when we get into. Actually, we'll just jump right into this. Speaking of coaching school. We were at a Texas Tech social, Mike Craven, for a couple of minutes, and everybody, we kind of hung around and saw Joey McGuire. If you get an invite from Joey McGuire, you got to go, right?
You gotta
Doesn't
go.
matter what.
That's true.
And so, but after that social, he had to make kind of a quick trip back to Lubbock. And we later found out why, because he said it was something big. That's all he hinted at us, was something big for the program. Well, the Matador Club announced that they would be signing every single Texas Tech player to an NIL deal worth $25,000. 100 players for Texas Tech football.
That's absurd.
Mike Craven, where's this money been at for our whole lives for Texas Tech?
Yeah. I think we're starting to see how much they didn't like Matt Wells. You know what I mean? Like,
Very
That's a good
true,
point.
unfortunately.
it's like that program went into like dormancy for a while,
Yes.
like hibernation for a little while. And now that Joey's there and kind of going around shaking hands, kissing babies, doing the Joey McGuire thing, like they've remembered that oil is from West Texas and they have a lot of money, and it is a place that has 40,000 students at it right now. You know, it's a huge alumni base, a lot to pull from. I think this is tremendous, and it's a statement of intent from Texas Tech that we're not going anywhere, right? Like conference realignment can happen. All these things can happen. Y'all can act like the Big 12 is dead, but look what we're doing, right? This is $2.5 million.
Yeah.
Per season, right? And right now it's 1 year. I was talking to some guys at the Matador Club organization. They assume this is going to keep growing, You know, like this isn't going to be a 1-year thing. It may be 30,000, maybe 35, it may be 40. They want to get it to men's basketball and baseball pretty soon. Eventually, they see this thing as every single player at Texas Tech, women's, men's, paid sport, not paid sport, is a part of this organization. I think we start seeing copycats of this everywhere, and it's a great recruiting tool for Joey McGuire. It's a great recruiting tool for the guys on the team.
Yeah.
Right? In the era of the transfer portal, why are you leaving now?
Right.
You know, if you got $25,000 plus your scholarship, now all of a sudden you're at market value. And people like me who have always been arguing for players to get paid, you know, weren't arguing for them to get paid millions of dollars.
Right, no.
It was just
Their
for
worth.
them, right, for them to just get paid market value the rest of the way the rest of us do. And if you add $25K onto the scholarship and the housing and all that kind of stuff, now they got pocket money. Now they can go to the movies. Now they can go on vacation. Now they can do all the other things that we all want to do. And so, yeah, I think this is really big for Texas Tech, and it's one of those things that in 4 or 5 years, this is the norm.
Yeah. I was about to say, like, as anybody who works for a living, right? $25,000 is not life-changing money
Before
in terms
taxes.
before taxes is not life-changing money in terms if you're looking at it as a salary, right? But if you're just a kid who just wants the basic necessities, right? If you walk up to anybody and just hand them $25,000, right? Not over the course of a year, but just here. That's changing money, right? That's immediately changes what you don't have to worry about. Oh, can I go home for the break? Can I do this? Can I do that? So much is taken off your plate.
Can my parents come to my game?
Right, exactly. Can you afford to bring them? Yeah, you can obviously just afford to bring them.
Does
Mom,
my
don't worry
brother
about it.
get new clothes before his 6th grade school year?
Exactly.
Like things like that that people
parents
don't
that
think
can't
about.
take PTO. Oh, don't worry about it. Yeah, miss that day, Mom. You're fine. I got you. Right. This is what we're talking about when it comes to these types of NIL deals. When it comes to just. Again, this is more than pocket change. I don't want to actually act like it's a small sum of money. This is a large sum of money. But overall, we were just wanting these guys to have like quality of life money, right? And obviously, on top of that, if you're somebody like a Taj Brooks that can maybe make some more money off his name, image, and likeness, then it turns into something else when you're adding on to that. And so that's overall, this is the spirit of what we wanted, right? And when you're at a place like Texas Tech, which clearly has money, now you're motivated to give it to the players, right? They just announced the end zone complex, which is great. I'm not saying, players love good facilities. You know, if you want to be a top program, you should absolutely invest in facilities. But also, we see the spaceships that are at LSU and Oregon and all that. And so for so many years, that was the height of the investment in players, right? It was like, cool, you got a hot tub in your locker room. And it's like, all right, what happens when you leave?
Right.
Like,
it's like if your boss came to you and was like, yeah, no raises this year, but we're getting new chairs.
Right, exactly. And so all the players are watching this technology just like flare up around them. It's like, yeah, you got a PS5 now in the clubhouse. It's like, cool, I don't have a PS5 in my apartment. Like, I'm not going to be at the clubhouse all the time. So just things like that. This isn't millions of dollars. This isn't everybody making Bryce Young money, but it's just giving them that baseline saying, hey, we got you.
And
right?
it provides some equity.
Easily,
right? If you're the
easily.
backup guard, you're making as much as the quarterback, right, on this deal.
Sure,
like you
right.
mentioned, you
Just
can go
right
get
now.
extra money and all this kind of stuff. But it provides a little equity, and it keeps Texas Tech from being in that recruiting NIL game.
Yes,
You know, where
yes.
it's like, is there going to be a guy who shows up to campus that's making more than like the starting left tackle? Well, now everybody's at $25K. That's your base kind of starting salary. And so, yeah, I think it's a very smart move. It's a good move, and it's one that in 5 years we look back on and we're like, oh, well, duh, that's how everybody's going to do it.
Right. As I mentioned before, we are at Conference USA Media Day. July 25th, Monday, they announced the Conference USA projected polls from the media. And I don't think too surprisingly, UTSA picked to win. They're picked to go back-to-back. North Texas came in at 5th, UTEP at 6th, and Rice at 10th. Mike Craven, what was your takeaway? Were you surprised at all that UTSA was picked again? There are some pieces to replace on this team.
Yeah, I think UTSA, UAB are kind of the front runners there, so that was pretty obvious. I kind of thought it'd be a little bit closer, 14 first-place votes for UTSA, 8 for UAB. Western Kentucky still third, despite losing all that offensive production. I think kind of shows kind of where Conference USA is. There's a big drop, in my opinion, after UTSA and UAB. The thing I find most fascinating is the North Texas UTEP. at 5-6, right? Like, I think those two teams are pretty even on paper. They play week 0 out in El Paso. Like, there's just going to be – it's hard. I don't want to sit here and act like we're going to learn a lot from an August 27th game.
Right.
But we're going to learn a lot. We're going to learn a decent amount from this August 27th
Just
game.
between those two teams,
Right.
yeah.
Between those two teams and what that middle of the pack is
Yeah.
For Conference USA, like where that level is. So, yeah, pretty much everything that I thought. I think Rice is going to be better than 10th. But I get why people wouldn't predict that until we see it on the field.
Yeah. I think one thing that was interesting to me, kind of looking at outside the Texas schools, I don't know what anybody can say about Western Kentucky right now. Right? You lose your
Nothing
offensive
is
coordinator,
certain.
you lose your
Yeah.
quarterback, you lose your best receiver. Like, obviously Jared Dagey comes in, so he's going to be the guy now there. So, like, obviously they have FBS caliber talent, potentially, probably that, like, lower Power 5 caliber talent even potentially in him. But I see that third place finish, and I'm like, oh, they were good. They were good last year, so I'm just going to kind of slot them that they'll figure it out this year. I don't know. I don't know how you can say that they're third and like UTEP is 6th and have any confidence in any of that 3 through 6. Like you mentioned, that middle, and then you want to add Charlotte, Middle Tennessee in there. I don't know, and what's potentially Sonny Cubby could do at La Tech. I don't know anything from like that 3 to 9 range.
Yeah, it really is like in tiers, right? There's
Sure,
like
sure.
the top 2 teams, and there's like 3 through 8, then there's 9 through 11.
Yeah.
Just kind of in that, or maybe even 8 through 11 with Middle Tennessee being in there. So,
Maybe.
I think like what we saw with UTEP last year, the nice thing about about Conference USA is you can make a move up. You can go from 4 wins to 8 wins pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so we'll see if Rice is able to make a UTEP similar jump this year. Because just from talking to that staff, they were all at coaching school, right? They're confident, you know, and everybody feels pretty good this year. Like, you rarely do you get a coach that's like, yeah, we're going to stink.
Right.
But usually they'll pull some punches and be like, well, we don't know. We're going to have to see some things.
Yeah.
Some things are going to break this way. We're going to have to stay healthy. Rice like, no, we're good, guys.
Yeah.
Like, we're pretty good. And so we'll see if that translates onto the field in the fall.
Another poll that came out last week was the SEC media poll, and A&M picked 2nd in the West, unsurprisingly behind Alabama. But I'm kind of wondering, are you picking A&M over Arkansas and Ole Miss right now?
I'm not. Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine is not. Like, if you can tell me at the end of the year Texas A&M finishes 2nd in the West, I'm not too shocked.
Sure.
I mean, they got the talent to do it.
But heading in,
I need to see that passing game.
let's put it this way. So the SEC does something different than others. They actually have media members pick a SEC champion. Right. You had Alabama gets 158 votes, or Georgia picks 18, South Carolina 3, Vanderbilt 1, sure, whatever. A&M 1. Like, there was no votes for Arkansas or Ole Miss, which, again, if you talk about winning the offseason, hard to go against Ole Miss. If you talk about trajectory, Arkansas is pretty damn
Or
well
even
on good
LSU,
track.
too.
Or even LSU. They've done some things, right? Ryan
Yeah.
Kelly's gotten a
They've
pretty...
picked up a couple of good recruits recently,
exactly.
too.
So, like, I don't know what to expect from A&M.
I think that recruiting class has really clouded some people's judgment.
Yes.
Like,
That's
man,
fair.
they signed the best recruiting class of all time. Look how good things are going at A&M. And I agree with that to an extent.
Yeah.
Just not in 2022.
No,
Like
it's going to take some
2023
time.
2023, 2024, Texas A&M may win the SEC, much
Sure.
less finish 2nd in the West. Like, that's going to be a really good football team. But for me, I need to see what that passing game is like before I pick them to be 2nd in the West. You add in the Aeneas Smith off the field stuff. We'll see how that goes. I don't know who their quarterback is. Their best wide receiver is a true freshman.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
and that was true in the spring. He was their best wide receiver as soon as he stepped onto campus, and he should have still
Sheesh.
been in high school, right? So until that's true, until like they have weapons and a quarterback that's consistent, I don't know how you pick them over an Arkansas team that just continuously blows people away and overperforms what expectations are. Like, KJ Jefferson's a legit quarterback. Like, that dude's good. That
And, like, they might be-
Arkansas defense is really good. That linebacker core is good.
I was about to
would
say,
pick
somebody like
Arkansas
Malik Hornsby
2nd in the
we've
West.
known about for a while.
Right.
Like, is he next in line to be their next guy after quarterback kind of limited them last year?
Jalen Catalon, Bumper Pool, like
Yep.
those guys. That defense is loaded.
Drew
and
Sanders.
so, yeah, Drew Sanders. I forgot that Drew Sanders is there at Arkansas now. So, yeah, I think Arkansas is being slept on, and if it was me, I'd have them 2nd in the West.
So that'll do it for the media polls. We got media days that's going on right now. As we're recording, Big Ten media days going on, which I assume is just the commissioner Millie rocking on the grave of the Pac-12 or something. But, like I said, we'll be
The
providing
idea of a Midwesterner Millie rocking, you know, is
I
just,
need
like,
that
hilarious.
footage.
Hilarious to me.
anyway, like I said, we'll be providing you coverage with Conference USA Media Day over the next day, and I'm sure Craven will have some stuff up his sleeve as well when we get done. Anyway, we are the Republic of Football here on DaveCampbellsFootball.com. If you're watching us right now, you're obviously familiar with our streaming, right? We are on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, on TexFootball.com, YouTube, Facebook as well. And you can find us here every week at 2 p.m. When the season starts, keep this in mind. When the season starts, we will still be here at 2 p.m. every Wednesday live streaming. But we will also be adding our usual Sunday recaps. Those will just be via podcast, via Spotify, Apple. Those will not be live, of course, because Craven will be on the road, I'll be on the road, Mallory will be on the road randomly. And so we'll kind of provide that to you as it comes, as you've been listening to us in the past. Be sure to subscribe at TexFootball.com and everywhere you get your podcasts. As I mentioned in the pre-show, or I guess the first segment, we have our special guest on, one that I was really excited about from The Athletic, Max Olson. I'm just going to say it, behind the scenes, we've had some technical issues. So, Max, what's it like to have you on again? Thanks for being with us.
It is good to be back on the show for a third time in the past 3 minutes. Excited to get this going. And, appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah. For the listeners at home, this is the beauty of recorded streaming instead of being live. So,
all good.
Yeah. As I mentioned 3 times before already, we were all at Big 12 Media Day. And we all got to see. I've focused on pronouncing his name right that I forgot his name. Brett Yormark.
Yormark.
Yes,
yep.
Yormark. Okay, I focused so much on pronouncing his name correctly that I literally forgot his name before I was about to say it. Anyway, it was our first impressions of him overall as Big 12 commissioner. Max, what were your overall takeaways from Big 12 Media Days and from hearing Brett Yormark speak as commissioner for the first time?
Yeah, I reported out a story when the Big 12 hired Brett Yormark, and my reaction was the same as even a lot of ADs in the conference, of like having to Google his name and be like, who is that, when that news came out that he was going to be the choice. We reported out a story about, kind of his background in pro sports over, 30 plus years, and his career as a CEO, and kind of his rise up the ladder, and just, when you talk to folks around the conference, the message was really that he blew people away in the interviews, just with his energy, his enthusiasm, with his big ideas, with the directions that he wanted to take the Big 12 in, and the conference in general, that just hadn't been done before. And I think you saw all that kind of on display at Media Days and kind of his first public appearance. This is a guy that, he has in declaring the Big 12 is open for business, he clearly is going to go about this his own way, and they made a hire that's probably the opposite of Bob Bowlesby in a lot of ways, because they feel like that's where college sports is heading. It's increasingly professionalized, and they feel like they need someone with a pro sports background from, working in NASCAR, from working in NBA organizations, and running the Nets, and everything he did in Brooklyn. They feel like they need someone to kind of hold their hand through all that, who has a different kind of experience than, a lot of these career, AD types did. And so I think that the enthusiasm is on display. Some of the buzzwords he threw out about making the, Big 12 younger and hipper, I'm fascinated to see what that actually looks like. But, clearly Brett Yormark is bringing a lot of energy, a lot of juice to this. And obviously, steps in a time when there's an opportunity potentially to raid the Pac-12, and I think he's a guy that's pretty excited about that opportunity.
Max, Mike Craven here. I'm curious, are you optimistic or pessimistic that the Big 12 can remain an important part of the national football landscape? Just with the conference realignment, with Yormark coming on, like, what are your just kind of overall thoughts on how they keep up, I suppose?
Yeah, it's pretty clear where this is all heading. That first of all, obviously money is driving all the decisions right now, and because of the new TV deals coming up, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to run away from the other 3 conferences. That's just clear. That's just where this is going. And so, the Big 12 is brought in a new commissioner at a time when they need to figure out a way to keep up by any means, and that's not just in moving forward without Texas and Oklahoma and just sort of the hit that you take on that. But then how do they just, bottom line, maximize revenue, maximize the annual distribution to their members? Because it really is all about that to a lot of folks. And so, the 4 new members, I think, are probably the best they could have done in terms of adding new schools. There's not, unless you get Notre Dame or something, like, there's not an Oklahoma or a Texas out there that you can get that makes the Big 12 what it was. But Right now I think you have to kind of look at their challenge here as not so much, what I don't think there's a bunch of moves you can make that suddenly you're making as much money as the Big Ten. But right now, I think the rat race here is how do you get ahead of the ACC and the Pac-12, and that's where, this opportunity to take 4 or 6 schools from the Pac-12, that's kind of the motivation there. I think is to, basically it's a eat or be eaten time right now, and you have to kind of embrace that and try to make those moves. And whether he can pull that off, I'm really not sure as of today. But that's where the struggle is for the Big 12 is how can you be, you've got to figure out a way to make as much money as at least those 2 leagues and stay competitive with them.
If you're the Big 12, how do you go about this Texas-Oklahoma departure with these new schools coming in next year? Do you try to expedite it up and get them out of here by 2023 so you can just kind of be, your full-fledged conference you're going to be for the rest of the time, or, rest of the time, whatever that means in college football these days? Or do you, as the Big 12, try to keep Texas and Oklahoma in it as long as, their contract says until they pay up? If you're the Big 12, kind of how do you go about that split?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's where the leadership change, I think, is an interesting dynamic and all that too, because Bob Bowlesby's position was pretty well established. That to him the cost was much more than $80 million, or whatever the associated buyout costs are, because there is the grant of rights, and they have looked into it. They've had expensive lawyers look it over for them and everything, and they trust that it is ironclad and it would hold up if there was any, suits or anything like that. And so, they really believe that they've got Texas and Oklahoma locked in until 2025. And so they have no really motivation to budge on that. Certainly their revenue distribution was really good this year and will keep going up, especially with those schools in the conference. And so it would take the cost would be pretty extreme to be willing to let them go. Now, we don't really know where Oklahoma and Texas stand on this. They've intentionally been really silent about their intentions on, when they want to leave, and are they going to give notice at the end of this year and try and, make that change in 23 or 24. We don't totally kind of know what their end game is here, but I thought that the comments from Yormark at media days were curious, because he said, in trying to make these deals, he looks for a win-win situation. Obviously, the win-win here would be the Big 12 getting as much money as possible from them, and Texas and Oklahoma getting out as soon as they want. Now, to me, I think you probably it's probably not just as simple as those guys sitting across from each other at a table and haggling over a number. I think probably in some ways with all this is kind of interconnected, and I feel like I've talked to some folks who believe maybe there's a way that ESPN intervenes in all this and kind of makes the money right for everybody. Could some third party like that kind of step in and help make that happen? I'd be curious to see, because ESPN would be motivated to get them over to the SEC in time for that TV contract, and there's stuff that they need to work out with LHN and all that. So I don't know if it's as simple as just, we've given our notice and we're out of here, and we'll pay whatever we got to pay. I think it's going to be a really interesting process going forward here, and hard to predict kind of when they would get out. I don't think they're going to be in the SEC next year, but with a change in commissioners, maybe it's a very different conversation now.
When we do get to that time when Oklahoma and Texas get out of the Big 12, who do you kind of see, or which teams, maybe not just one, but 2 or 3 teams, kind of emerge as kind of the power brokers of that new look Big 12, with the power vacuum kind of taking Texas and Oklahoma out of there?
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty fun league, and I think the parity is going to be pretty crazy, because it's when you take, you guys know, from a recruiting standpoint, Texas and Oklahoma are the only schools in the Big 12 that recruit at a top 10 level and are even capable of recruiting at a top 10 level, if we're being honest here. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost like everybody in the new Big 12 is kind of playing by the same salary cap, everyone is going to, there's going to be some that recruit better than others, but generally speaking, these are all programs that need to win on evaluation and development and really good coaching and stability. And so, I think Oklahoma State obviously is well positioned overall in terms of their investment and what Mike Gundy has done over his long tenure there. Now he's not going to coach there forever, and what's kind of the succession plan after that obviously is a question. You're seeing right now Texas Tech is really wanting to invest as much as they can in this opportunity, feeling like we can kind of rally everybody around Joey McGuire and spend a ton of money, and the NIL program they're doing I think is going to get a lot of players' attention, and you see them trying to make a push here. I think Baylor's obviously super well positioned, and for what they've done over the last decade with 3 different head coaches kind of proves that they can kind of get it done no matter what it looks like. But I think really the 4 new schools coming in, like, okay, a decade from now, wouldn't you say it's like pretty possible that Cincinnati and Houston and UCF and BYU are maybe among those 5 or 6 most successful programs in the Big 12 over the next decade? Like, I think that's really possible. Like, I think when you take those programs and you give them more money and a bigger platform and bigger games and stuff, like as we've seen with TCU in the Big 12 or Utah in the Pac-12 or any other example, like I think you have a chance there to really kind of level up. And I think some of these schools are already recruiting at as good a level as Big 12 programs. So with that boost of being in that conference, like I think it's definitely, like, is it possible Houston's one of the most powerful Big 12 programs 5-10 years from now? Like, I think that's totally possible.
Yeah, I agree with 100%. I think there is this 10-year outlook where Houston and Cincinnati are dominating the Big 12, and it's like, who let that mouse in the house, type of situation. Just a few quick ones before you let you go. Who do you think wins the SEC first, Texas or Texas A&M?
Oh my goodness, that is a trap. That is a good one. Man. Well, it's funny because we don't really know like how the schedules are going to really work when Texas is in the SEC, and kind of does that make things easier or harder? Right now, obviously, it's really hard to climb up the ladder in the SEC West and get it done. Gosh,
Man, I stumped him.
I think today I would take A&M, but I think that I don't know. I think that you could kind of see both programs as well as their recruiting of these past year or these past 2 cycles really. There's still a lot they got to figure out. So I think A&M more likely. And maybe that becomes a little bit easier if they're going to kind of more pod scheduling or whatever going forward. But man, that is like, do you guys think that one of them will get it done by the end of the decade?
Yeah, that's a good here's the thing is
because like Saban will be gone at some point, right?
Sure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just a fact. So like there's at some point in time that door opens for somebody.
Because here's my thing. Like, A&M has the head start because they've been in the SEC for longer. What I worry about for A&M is this a 400-meter dash where they're just in lane 4 and Texas is in lane 1, and by the time we get to the third curve, that start is gone, right? Does it only take Texas 2 or 3 years to really catch up on that?
Credit to Texas for doing this, but they're recruiting like an SEC team, right? They're building the trenches. They get Sarkisian, right? They're getting an offense that's more friendly to that. We see the Big 12 kind of going outside of Texas, kind of reverting, right? Going defensive, right? You get Dave Aranda. You got obviously Texas looked at Gary Patterson as somebody who knows that coached against that conference. I think they've been preparing for the past year or so for the SEC move. So I don't know if A&M's going to have necessarily that big of a gap on them. They go and get Quinn Ewers, right? Obviously, SEC to win the SEC. I know last year was an anomaly, but you need a quarterback, right? They go try and get that quarterback. I think that's a good point about A&M's gap kind of being a little bit shorter, I think, than we may realize.
It's a fun.
Do you guys think that Jimbo and Sark are both coaching at those schools 5 years from now?
Ooh,
That's a good question.
I think it's more likely that Sark is
Because
than
that
Jimbo,
stability
to be
piece
honest.
is like got to be kind of the huge piece of like, can you actually climb that ladder? Like if can Texas actually break the cycle of, firing a guy after 3-4 years because you recruited really well and you kind of built up all this hype and then you didn't deliver on it. Like at least with Jimbo, you've got the long-term contract and he's got all the leverage in that, obviously. But like, I guess there's maybe a little bit more of a bet that Jimbo's going to outlast Sark, I guess would be my thinking today, but that could totally change.
100%. Craven, I see your point on Jimbo because if he has a couple more 8-9 win seasons, right, it starts to become the Kevin Sumlin thing.
When he has no buy-in, he can leave whenever he wants, right? So he could get bored and get a different job.
I will say with
to.
Texas though, I think there is a very realistic possibility that they just look south and say we have a guy in the university system that if UTSA has another season like last year in the next decade, which is possible, they just say, why isn't that guy coaching us?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
so
we could get into a whole
Sure,
podcast
exactly,
on like why Jeff Traylor,
No, sure, I
getting
get
with
it,
the
but I think
UT money
I think
folks.
that's gonna. I don't want to say that's gonna hurt Sark, but that's something that I could see hurting Sark eventually if they just see a guy recruiting Texas kids, doing it well, winning in the university system, saying, "Well, we're just basically reinvesting in our university if we pay the buyout for him."
I'm just excited that we get to have these that
Sure,
Texas
sure.
and Texas A&M are going to be back in the same pool swimming again, and so we don't have to just do this on Twitter all the time. Max, sorry to just kind of
100%.
include you into our podcast there, but
No, trust me, on that topic we can go another hour.
I know, exactly.
before we get you out of here, just another really easy one, just like that. Who do you think has more success at their school, Sonny Dykes at TCU or Joey McGuire at Texas Tech?
Oh, easy questions today.
Oh my god! Wow. I mean, this is the Dave Campbell Texas football podcast, so I can't legally besmirch Joey McGuire on this, can I? I mean, I can't do that.
Well, you could, but he'll come to our office and
Yeah,
show us.
he'll give us.
Well, look, I mean, as you guys have seen over the past week, like with the Brian Carrington cactus stuff, like real. I mean, there's a little more juice to that rivalry than there was a year or two ago. You know, it's pretty fun now, especially in going head to head on guys and recruiting in the state and all that. Like, and who's going to have more success? I mean, I think TCU is set up really well in the new Big 12 if they can kind of develop and retain, because I think they're pretty well established in this state now. I think it's more challenging at Texas Tech, but that doesn't mean I think that it's going to be like it doesn't mean I think that they can't get it done there. I think that's probably the right guy. I love the staff that he's put together there, and he's got to figure out a way to hold on to those guys or replace those guys when he loses them, because he's got some really, really bright young coaches there who've got really bright futures, and so that part of it's going to be huge. Sonny Dykes made some changes on his own staff and taken this job. I don't know if I can pick one today. Like I think it is just objectively harder to do it at Texas Tech. So I think I would lean TCU, but man, the way that everyone's kind of pulling in the same direction at Tech right now, I know that they don't have that same kind of recent history of success, but they're pretty serious now about what's going on in Lubbock. And within a couple of years here, like, yeah, it's harder to get to, but I mean, I think when kids get there in the future, they're going to be pretty impressed by what's going on there. So I think I would lean TCU, but I love what Tech is doing right now.
Okay, and then last one is 2026. Is Dave Aranda still the head coach of the Baylor Bears?
Ooh. This is the hard thing with Dave Aranda when he was at LSU. Like, it was kind of hard to tell, like, where's he trying to get to? Is he trying to be a head coach? What's the move for him? And even last year with I'm sure he heard from quite a few schools about their jobs and probably some of the biggest openings out there. So like, I think he's going to sustain success at Baylor. I think he's going to get more of those phone calls, especially from, I know that maybe some people would take the, they would maybe take the demeanor and personality and think it's a little different than everybody else. And I think it's different in a great way.
Yep.
I could definitely see him being a guy that stays at Baylor for the long haul, because he's just wired a little different than that. Not to say he's not an ambitious guy, but I mean, what are the jobs out there that he would want to run to? I think that, especially when you come from that experience at LSU, you can see like kind of how quickly, if it's going wrong, how quickly people can kind of turn on you and fire you and stuff like that. So like, I think if you got a good thing going there, just like it was for Matt Rule, I mean, really hard to walk away from it, and it's got to be kind of that dream job you've always kind of wanted. So I think Baylor's going to have an easier time holding on to Aranda, but as we saw in this last cycle, like, you never would expect that Oklahoma would open up. You never would expect that Notre Dame would open. I mean, you just never know which of these jobs kind of come along here. So I think Baylor's going to be able to hold on to him, but you really don't know, what's his ambition in terms of what does he think is the best job out there.
All righty, sir. We really appreciate the time. Thanks for being a good sport on some of those.
Hey, absolutely. Anytime, guys.
There's Max Olson. You can read his work at The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter, Max_Olson. That's Olson with 2 O's for Texas fans trying to Holler at him for saying that A&M will win the SEC first. No, Max is great. I'm glad that he was able to have some fun with some of the rapid fire questions there. Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I agree with a lot of what he said. I do want to hint on before we get to our last topic. There was a reason why teams in the Big 12 were terrified of Houston getting to the Big 12. Do you remember in 2011 when it was like, oh, is this the year, right? When Tom Herman got them going, it was like, is this the year where they make their pitch to the Big 12? And the Big 12 was like, no. Like they were like, absolutely not. Because they never had the Houston, at the time, A&M, obviously Texas, Baylor, Tech, TCU, they had the Houston market to themselves. They had to worry about LSU coming in eventually. But as far as the Big 12 went, they didn't have anybody to deal with in the Houston market. Now you get the flagship school of Houston getting the same amount of money. Obviously,
with
this was
with Fertitta.
Yeah,
with a guy
exactly.
who's got money.
Yeah, exactly. And now, obviously now it was kind of a last ditch effort, right? They needed somebody. They needed kind of a new co-flagship with all of them, right? I don't think anybody's going to necessarily stand out as the Texas or as a Texas or Oklahoma, but they needed somebody to kind of collectively share the burden with. So they finally just hit the emergency glass and said, "Let's bring Houston in." That is fascinating. When you give Houston the same amount of money as Tech and Baylor, what happens?
Who knows?
Right?
Yeah, I think he's right. I think there is this timeline 10 years from now where we look at the Big 12 and go, well, Cincinnati's number 1, Houston's number 2, UCF's number 3, BYU's right there. I really can see that. I think Tech, TCU, Baylor have something to say about that.
Sure.
And if the last question, if Aranda stays there throughout, I mean, I'm betting on wherever Dave Aranda is. I've kind of arrived at that point in my opinions. But yeah, I think those markets that they're bringing in, those teams and programs that they're bringing in, once they have that money and infrastructure of a Big 12 program, can be right there with all those guys, because we don't talk about Ohio enough,
right,
in terms of football recruiting.
Sure.
Yep.
They're right there. I think as Texans we kind of Texas and everybody else, right?
Yeah.
Even California, Florida get moved in there. But in terms of huge, it's Georgia and Ohio are the best places for high school football outside of those top 3. And
look at
they're going to be good.
Look at the colleges. You got Ohio State, obviously, as the top. You got Cincinnati. Ohio's consistently been one of the best mid-majors of the last couple of years. Youngstown State has consistently been FCS power. Ohio, you can absolutely
Half
make
that
a
West
living.
Virginia roster is Ohio.
Right, exactly. You can absolutely make a living recruiting the state of Ohio. So, all right, in the beginning, I mentioned we're going to play a weekly segment. I don't know, it might be weekly at this point, called What Did Mike Craven Do to Piss Off Twitter? Well, this week we're doing the Texas 12 rankings. We're ranking position groups, coaches, right, kind of like a power rankings-ish, but kind of like a snapshot, right? Like as of right now, this is the rankings for blank. Well, we decided to do quarterback room. The reason why we did quarterback rooms is because there's so much up in the air right now with certain starting quarterbacks that you can't just name one guy. Obviously, you can kind of pencil in some people right now, but that could change week 2, whatever. So we decided to go quarterback rooms. Well, I don't know if some people realized that was our line of thinking, because we had some...
We had some angry fans in the comments.
This might have been one of the most engaged posts that we've had in a while. I think this might be the most engaged post on our college football account.
For sure. Definitely.
I know on Facebook, the main account had a lot of interactions as well.
Are we allowed to call people stupid?
Listen, I think if people act stupid, you can call them stupid.
Yeah.
I found
No,
this
Mike,
conversation...
let me start this.
Sorry.
Mike Craven, why did you rank SMU, Houston, UTSA with incumbent starting quarterbacks over my team that has a quarterback that has not thrown a meaningful pass, or that has a quarterback that only good game came against a team with no pass rush? Go.
I feel like this comes down to people look at it and go, who's the most talented quarterback room?
Right.
And that's different.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't compare SMU playing in the ACC to A&M playing in the SEC. There's
pound for pound rules.
Right. It's pound for pound rules, right? Mm-hmm. This is what we're doing. This is Dave Campbell's Texas football. You should know the drill by now, right? Mm-hmm. SMU had a quarterback that threw for 4,000 plus yards. Houston had a quarterback that threw for 36 touchdowns and went to a conference championship game. UTSA.
No, but Mike Craven, Quinn Ewers,
and Arch Manning, who's not even there yet,
handed the ball off in a blowout against Ohio State. Why isn't he better than Tanner Mordecai in your rankings?
Well, because the last time I saw Quinn Ewers play, he was getting dominated by Todd Dodge's defense at Westlake. You know what I mean? And so, I guess we could bet on the come. And if you're asking me the most talented quarterback rooms, yeah, sure. Texas Hudson Card's a really talented guy. Quinn Ewers, 5-star prospect. We all agree on all that kind of stuff. But I've never seen either one of them do it in a college game meaningful. Like Hudson Card lost his job to Casey Thompson.
Yeah.
A&M can't find a quarterback.
Right.
They went to LSU and kind of got a guy that LSU didn't really want anymore, and he may be their starter and stuff. I think this is just one of those weird years where the G5 quarterback rooms are in much better positions than the P5 ones, especially if we compare them to like competition. And at the end of this year, people may be right. Texas may have the best quarterback room. Quinn Ewers could throw for 4,500 yards, 40 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and it's like, hey, yeah, that's the guy we thought we'd see coming out of South Lake Carroll. But I can't, with good conscience, just do that. Just put it on the list in front of guys who we have literally seen do it at their highest level. Maybe their level isn't as high as A&M or Texas is, but we've seen them win meaningful conference games and have their teams do really good things. Texas went 5-7 last year.
Sure.
Their quarterback room is not number 1 in the state. I'm sorry.
Right. I remember Texas fans, if it gives you any solace, we could absolutely make an argument that they're below Tech, TCU, and A&M. Why? And Baylor, because they have quarterback. Those teams have quarterbacks that we've seen do it.
Yes.
Donovan Smith, say what you want about him. We know he did something.
That's
right?
what's funny
Tyler
about this.
Shuck, we've seen him do something.
That's what's funny is like I thought I rated Texas too high.
Right.
Yeah.
Max Duggan, whatever you think of Max Duggan, he has more games under his belt, meaningful snaps than Hudson Card and Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, Blake Shapen tore up the Sugar Bowl before he got hurt.
Right.
Baylor's got a good court. But yeah, I Texas fans are the most sensitive people on the internet.
Oh,
I know they like to make Texas A&M fans the most sensitive fans on the internet. A&M fans are just the craziest fans on the internet. Texas fans are the most sensitive fans on the internet.
Oh,
it's not even close.
Easily.
Easy clickbait.
Oh, my God. It was great. It was great. Look, watching the engagement roll in, you're just like, man, we're going to drop this exact same list in like October. It's going to change, and it's going to be like, oh, why is blah, blah, blah.
What I loved is like the Davey O'Brien watch list award was like, this lines up perfectly with like what our nominations were. And I was like,
I retweeted that.
Shout out Watch this season, baby.
I had like my Brian Windhurst moment.
Now, why would they tweet that?
Yeah, why would they do that? You know?
No, I agree. Like, listen, this is a snapshot of what we project right now.
Entering 2022.
Honestly, and if you pick up the magazine, this is consistent with what's in the magazine. Look who's the first-team quarterback. Look who's the second-team quarterback. It's the guys 1 and 2 on this list.
Yeah.
Like, it's the guys that played for conference championships last year.
It's not the Ohio State transfer.
It's not the Ohio State transfer, right? So, I don't know. It's funny to me. Obviously, I know why, because Quinn Ewers is the greatest thing since sliced bread. 247 had him since whatever. Vince Young, I don't know their rankings. They're just something Vince Young, something Garrett Gilbert. I don't know. But Garrett Gilbert should be a cautionary tale that unless we see them do it, it's always speculation, right? There's no – you saw Quinn Ewers. You covered Quinn Ewers,
He's incredible.
He is absolute natural talent.
Yeah, we're not saying he's not good.
Natural talent. He might be number 1 just in terms of pure natural gifted talent.
Yeah, if we're talking about like just like scouting talent.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Sure.
So, but
Hudson Card is on
checked
top
all the
of that
boxes
list
too,
and he couldn't beat out Casey Thompson.
I was about to say, like I
So,
said, the only game he
football
had
happens on the field.
The only good game Hudson Card had was against a team with no pass rush when Louisiana couldn't figure out how to get to him.
I also saw a couple comments that were like, "Oh, well, what about Arch Manning too?" I'm like, he's not even he hasn't even signed yet. Like he's just verbally committed at this point.
Don't disrespect Malik Murphy like that. Just dumping him out of the QB room. That's the other guy that's actually pretty physically gifted.
Yeah.
So second of all, not even in the room yet.
Yeah.
I think we should all know after the last couple of years that people can't read.
No.
Right?
No.
Not critically. Right? I mean, they can physically read words.
Right.
I know what
critical
the
thinking
is.
was missed in
they
elementary
look
school.
over context. They look over things like that. So, anyway, we have that was last week. We have another graphic up for this week. That's surprisingly getting a lot less engagement because a certain team is number 1.
Texas is on top, so nobody's there to cry about it.
So we'll talk about the running back room next week because I do think it might be one of the better years. It might be the best year in a long time across the state in terms of just running back
The
talent.
way that we have questions about quarterbacks throughout the state,
We do
have
not.
the opposite problem
For
with
running
running backs.
backs.
Like,
It's
there's
very
a
clear.
plethora of running, and that's with Zach Evans and Luis Bentley leaving the state, and Alton McCaskill being hurt.
But Craven, I'm surprised. Why isn't there as much of an uproar about the running backs as there are the quarterbacks?
Yeah, you put Texas and Texas A&M on top, and there's
There's
to
no
be a
complaints
lot,
there.
like
No
mice.
complaints there.
Nobody's like congratulating us. For
I was
getting
about to say, great rankings,
right,
Mike Craven.
yeah, right.
I haven't seen one good comment.
It's like being a parent.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
It
Yeah,
is.
you know,
Like,
you know.
the kids just
That's a great
complain.
kid you got there.
Right. Well,
Well,
and
sometimes
the
you get
kid's
that.
never like, hey, thanks, Dad, for being in the right spot at the right time. You know.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for
yeah.
being there always. It's
Yeah.
not till like they're in their 40s. He's like, thanks for being there when I was
Right,
younger. It's
right.
like
That was pretty
retrospect.
cool of you to be a dad.
That's pretty cool of you to be a dad. Oh.
Anyway, so that'll do it for us. Like I said, this is a recorded show. We'll be at Conference USA Media Day all today as you're watching this. We'll be bringing you interviews, all this stuff. Craven will have a story or so after we get done. And we'll continue to keep rolling out these podcasts as we get closer to the season because, damn, it's getting really close. Like I mentioned, all the Group of 5 schools, Big Ten's obviously Media Days right now. Sunbelt's going on right now as well. Conference USA, but just mentioned, we're there. It's starting to get all there. Watch lists are coming out. Mike Craven probably just made a watch list. I don't know. Everybody comes out with something every week now.
We only have 4 weekends left.
Ugh.
Man,
I can't even imagine.
yeah. It was depressing when I got back from my last vacation. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I got nothing until like the season starts. I'm just here.
I feel like the season just ended too.
Right,
I
right,
don't-
yeah, exactly.
I don't even feel like it's. I don't know.
Oh, we got to get ready to just like be on the road, just talk to people until December, basically.
Till
So,
December. Wow,
that'll
that's a
be
long
fun.
time.
yeah. Anyway, we'll be back next Wednesday, hopefully live, actually live,
Yeah,
because
fingers
knocking
crossed.
on all the wood. There's hopefully nothing going on. But like I mentioned, we're here every Wednesday at 2. You can subscribe everywhere you get your podcasts. You can watch anywhere you can imagine streaming. You know, we're there. TextFootball.com. Be sure to subscribe. We got archive. We got the archive, the magazine up on archive right now, so you can actually read it online if you haven't gotten your hard copy. They're coming in stores. I swear to God, they're it is like
coming.
within the next couple of weeks you will start to see them on the shelves because the paper situation is finally solved. If you're a subscriber, you've had the magazine, so consider that your incentive for next year. Make up for that mistake if you have not done that already. For Mike Craven, Mallory Hartley, I'm Ishmael Johnson. We will talk to you guys next week. And remember, we've had 11 of the 12 FBS head coaches on this show. Jimbo Fisher, please give us a call.